The feds desperately want a federal gun registry. A federal gun registry is prohibited by the Supreme Court of the United States, which ruled that gun regulations are a state matter and not a federal matter. Why do they want a federal gun registry? For two reasons. They want to be able to intimidate gun owners. They want to be able to say, let's see, you're on Social Security. You get $1,500 or $1,750 or $2,000 a month, and you just went out and bought a handgun for $2,000. We think you spent too much money on that handgun. Where is that money coming from? Damn it, it's none of the government's business where that money is coming from. It's none of the government's business how you spend your money. It's none of the government's business what your income is, as long as you report it properly to the IRS authority. It's none of the BATF's business about tracking guns and buying guns and how much you're spending. They'll go to a 78-year-old man and knock on the door and say, we see that you bought 2 guns last week, and we know what your income is. Can you show us the guns to make sure you still have them? Think I'm making it up? I'm not. That happened in Wilmington, Delaware, where the senior citizen recorded the conversation. The BATF agent didn't know he was being recorded. The senior citizen is aware of his rights under the Second Amendment, and he politely closed the door. If the BATF knocks at your front door asking to see your guns, ask them for their search warrant. They won't have one. Close the door and call the local police and say, there's a guy at my front door with a gun, and he's demanding to see my guns. And you'll see an armada of local police coming to arrest the BATF agent. What does the BATF really want? What does the federal government really want? It wants a federal gun registry. It wants to know who owns what guns. It is dying to have that registry. Right now, there are 51 separate registries for the 50 states and for the District of Columbia. Some of those states, like New Jersey and California, would gladly give that information, if it weren't against the law to do so, to the feds. Other states, like South Carolina, Texas, Florida, Montana, where the right to keep and bear arms is respected by state law, would never give that information to the feds. Well, why in God's name do the feds want a federal registry of guns? Because they want to know from whom they should seize guns under the right circumstances, like maybe another lockdown for a pandemic, people resisting the lockdown. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. You guys know me. I'm not making any of this up. It is harshly dangerous to the freedom of self-defense for there to be a federal gun registry, because the first thing dictators do when they take over a government is seize the guns so that the government can't be resisted. And the whole purpose of the Second Amendment is not to shoot deer. It's to protect yourself when the police can't or won't show, and it's to shoot at tyrants if they take over the government. The latter is not just me, though I have said it many times. That's Justice Scalia, the late, great Antonin Scalia, in the Heller versus District of Columbia decision 2008, which upholds the individual personal right to keep and bear arms. McDonald versus Illinois, Justice Alito, 3 years later, again upholds the individual right to keep and bear arms and requires the states to recognize it. DC versus Heller required the feds to recognize it. And finally, in this trilogy, is Bruin versus New York State Rifle Association, Justice Clarence Thomas, just 9 months ago, June of 2022, which says not only do you have the individual personal right to own a gun, you have the individual personal right as a law-abiding adult to carry a gun. And how do we characterize this right? As a first-class right, in the same category as the First Amendment. The government has no more right to a registry of gun owners than it does to a registry of book owners, because your right to keep and bear arms and defend yourself is in the same category as your right to think as you wish and say what you think. Oh, if we only had a government that recognized those rights.